Next, we will make section 3 of the shoulder parts. Let's take a look at the finished product. Join the yarn on the first loop at the left sleeve shoulder. Crochet in rounds. When knitting, start by increasing stitches at the positions of the left and right sleeve shoulders. After knitting a certain length, you also need to increase stitches at the corresponding positions of the front and back pieces. The new stitch technique used is M1BL. Please watch me demonstrate the specific knitting method. Before knitting, first move the stitch marker on the right side of the left sleeve shoulder. Transfer all the loops on the right side to the right straight needle. Then, join the yarn and start knitting the first round. The first stitch in the chart is a lifted stitch symbol. Take out the working yarn, make a slip knot. Place a stitch marker on the right straight needle to mark the starting position. Then place the loop on the right straight needle. Adjust the size of the loop. Slip the first loop off the left straight needle without working it. Treat these two loops as the two loops of a lifted stitch. The first lifted stitch is now complete, and the yarn has been joined. Next, work one purl stitch. Followed by one lifted stitch. Here, the fabric shows the texture of knit stitches. Place the working yarn above the right straight needle. Then slip the first loop off the left straight needle without working it. This completes the lifted stitch. As you can see, it is equivalent to working one yarn over and one slip stitch. The difference is that this is done on the right side of the fabric, at the position where a knit stitch would normally be worked. Continue with one purl stitch. Don't forget to wrap the yarn above the right straight needle first, before working the purl stitch. Follow this with one lifted stitch. The texture in my sample is random, so it's not for reference. Place the yarn tail above the right straight needle. Then pick up a stitch. Another lifted stitch is now complete. Then wrap the yarn above the right straight needle again, and work one purl stitch. This is done on the right side of the fabric. When working the brioche stitch pattern in the round, this shows the method for working lifted stitches and purl stitches. Continue following this method to work the brioche stitch pattern at the left and right shoulder positions of the sleeves. For the front and back pieces, refer to the chart and work the corresponding stitches. After completing this round, the first round is done. At the left shoulder position of the sleeve, place a marker on any chain below the circular needle to mark the position. This makes it convenient for counting rounds later. Continue with the second round. The first stitch is the position where you join the yarn with a lifted stitch. At the same time, pick up these two loops and work one knit stitch. Then work one purl stitch. Next, pick up the two loops at the lifted stitch position, and work one knit stitch. Then work one purl stitch. The pattern for this round at the sleeve shoulder position remains. At the lifted stitch position, pick up the 2 loops and work a knit stitch. And at the purl stitch position, work a purl stitch. Continue following this method until you reach just before the marker position. Next, at the positions of the front and back pieces, refer to the chart and work the corresponding stitches. At the sleeve shoulder position, work the brioche stitch pattern. After finishing this round, round 2 is now complete. Let's take a look at the piece. The shoulder parts in section 3 are worked in a circle at the top of the piece. When working at the left and right sleeve shoulder positions, work the brioche stitch pattern. At the positions of the front and back pieces, refer to the chart and work the corresponding patterns. When counting rounds, after completing an even number of rounds, start counting from the braid above the stitch marker. Each braid corresponds to 2 rounds. The loops on the straight needle do not count towards the round number. Continue working according to this method until you reach the increase position. You will need to add stitches during the knitting process. I'll first demonstrate the method for increasing stitches at the sleeve shoulder position. For the odd rows at the increase position, work a knit stitch at the lifted position as well. I have already completed my sample swatch. Next, on the even rows, work the increase stitches. Start with 1 knit stitch and 1 purl stitch. Repeat these 2 stitches twice. Now we are at the 3rd lifted position. Work 1 lifted stitch 3 in 1. Then continue alternating between purl and knit stitches until you reach the 3rd lifted position just before the stitch marker on the right side. Now we're at this position. Work 1 DC 3 in 1, 1 stitch, that releases 3 stitches. Then work 1 purl stitch and 1 knit stitch. Repeat these 2 stitches twice. This completes the increase stitches at the sleeve shoulder position. Next, at the back piece position, refer to the chart and knit the corresponding stitches. After completing it, at the right sleeve shoulder position, similarly at the 3rd lifted stitch, and the 3rd lifted stitch from the end, work 1 lifted stitch 3 in 1. For the remaining positions, work the corresponding purl and knit stitches. After completing this, at the front piece position, refer to the chart and knit the corresponding stitches. This completes the even round. Continue to work the next odd round. At the lifted stitch position, work a lifted stitch in the knit stitch. Work purl stitches at the purl stitch positions. Continue until just before the previous row's increase position. Now we're at this position. At the 3 additional loops, work 1 lifted stitch in the knit stitch, 1 purl stitch, and 1 lifted stitch. Continue working in this manner. Finish this round. This completes the even round. Continue working in this way. At the corresponding positions for the left and right shoulder seams, work several rounds evenly without increasing. Then work an increase round. Each increase is made at the shoulder seam. Specifically, at the third and third to last lifted stitch positions. Work the front and back pieces evenly according to the chart. Continue until just before the increase positions on both pieces. Let me demonstrate with this sample swatch the method for increasing at the front and back positions. First, work the brioche stitch pattern at the left shoulder seam. Now we're at the back piece position. First, make 1 backwards loop, M1BL for short. Place your right index finger above the yarn. Wrap it clockwise in a circle. Slip this loop onto the needle. Slightly tighten. This is the M1BL. Then, refer to the chart and work the corresponding stitches. Continue until just before the stitch marker on the left side. Now we've reached this position. Work another M1BL. Next, at the right shoulder sleeve position, work the corresponding brioche stitch pattern. When you reach the corresponding position on the front piece, work 1 M1BL. Then, refer to the chart and work the corresponding stitches. Continue until just before the marked position with a stitch marker. Now we've reached this position. Work 1 M1BL. This row is now complete. Continue with the next row. Start by working the corresponding brioche stitch pattern at the shoulder sleeve position. When you reach the back piece position, pick up the loop from the M1BL. Refer to the chart and work the corresponding pattern. Then, at the M1BL position, refer to the chart and work the corresponding pattern. Finish this round. This round is now complete. Continue in this way. Refer to the chart to work the increases at the front and back pieces and shoulder sleeve positions. Complete the corresponding number of rounds. Up to this point, the method for knitting the shoulder parts has been fully explained. Everyone, take a look. This is what the sample looks like after completing the shoulder parts. Next, let's learn the method for knitting the body. Connect the front and back pieces and work the corresponding pattern in rounds. After completing everything, you'll need to adjust the position of the first stitch. Please watch as I demonstrate the specific knitting method. I'll continue to demonstrate using this sample. Before we start knitting, first place the loops at the corresponding positions of the left and right shoulder sleeves on hold. Transfer the remaining loops to this shorter circular needle. I've already settled the sample. Next, we'll knit the first round. As you can see, the yarn tail is on the left side of the front piece. We'll start increasing stitches directly. Before we begin the increase, first, place a stitch marker on the right needle to mark the starting position. This helps distinguish the starting point. Then, knit the corresponding number of M1BL. Pay attention and don't pull the yarn tail too tight. The number of M1BL differs for different sizes. In my sample, there are fewer stitches. Once done, at the location of the newly increased group of loops, place a stitch marker on the middle loop. Next, start knitting the back piece. Make all rows using knit stitches. After completing the back piece, continue to increase stitches using the M1BL. Once done, place a stitch marker on the middle loop as well. After increasing the corresponding number of stitches, finish knitting the front piece. This is also done using knit stitches. Continue knitting until you reach the right side of the stitch marker. Note the loop position. This completes the first round. Place a stitch marker on the braid below the circular needle for marking. This makes it convenient to count rounds later. Next, knit the second round. Refer to the chart and follow the corresponding stitch pattern. My sample stitches are random. Move the stitch marker to the right straight needle. When knitting at the M1BL point, pay attention. Ensure the distance between the two straight needles is not too far. Prevent the carrying yarn in the middle from being too long. This ensures the texture remains flat. If during the knitting process, a loop accidentally slips off the left needle, you can take the short segment of yarn between these two needles and wrap it clockwise into a loop from the middle. Place this loop back onto the left needle. This will restore the loop. Continue following the chart for the next steps. Finish knitting them. This completes the second round. For the remaining part of the body, continue following the chart to knit the corresponding pattern. All the stitch techniques needed have been demonstrated before. Refer to the previous demonstrations and follow the chart for knitting. The specific number of rows can be checked in the chart. You can also adjust based on actual conditions. Ultimately, finish one complete pattern repeat. The pattern position in my sample is random, so it's not for reference. After the body is completed, you need to adjust the position of the first stitch. I'll demonstrate this using this sample. Remove the stitch marker and knit the corresponding number of knit stitches. This way, you adjust the position of the first stitch. Up to this point, the method for knitting the body has been fully explained. After the body is completed, continue by knitting the hem. Let's take a look at the finished product. The hem is divided into two parts, front and back. Each part is knitted back and forth in single rib stitch pattern. This creates a split like this. The row counts for the hems of the front and back pieces are different, creating a height difference. The new stitch technique used is bind off stitches. Now, please watch as I demonstrate the specific knitting method. Let's start with the back piece hem. I'll continue using this sample to demonstrate. Before we begin knitting, first count out the corresponding number of stitches on the circular needle. Place a stitch marker to mark it. My sample is already marked. Next, work row 1. You can use another circular needle here to knit. Start with 2 knit stitches. Then 1 purl stitch. Alternate with 1 knit stitch. Work the single rib pattern. Continue until you reach 1 loop before the right of the stitch marker. Now we've reached this position. Finish with a knit stitch for the last loop. That completes row 1. Place a stitch marker on any chain below the circular needle. This makes it convenient to count rounds. Leave the remaining loops untouched for now. Continue with row 2. Still using this circular needle. Turn the work piece to the wrong side. Work the stitches opposite to the chart, or knit the first and last stitch. And follow the texture for the rest. Once you finish this row, row 2 is completed. For the hems, continue back and forth, working the single rib stitch by alternating between knit and purl stitches. Pay attention, the first and last stitch of each row should be knit stitches. You can follow the texture, or refer to the chart. Continue until you reach the corresponding row number in the chart. When counting rows, start from the braid above the stitch marker. and include the loops on the circular needle. Refer to the previous demonstration and follow the chart to complete them. After finishing the last row of the hem, you need to close the loops. I'll continue using this small sample to demonstrate the single rib bind-off method. The small sample has fewer rows, so we're only demonstrating the technique. Knit the first stitch on the left needle. Purl the second stitch. The yarn tail is currently below the fabric piece. We need to bring the yarn tail from behind the right needle up over the fabric piece before continuing to knit. Slip the loop on the right needle. Place the right needle under the yarn tail. Then insert it into the slipped loop. When inserting, be mindful not to twist the loop's texture. This brings the yarn tail above the fabric piece. Work one purl stitch. After completing it, pass the loop on the right side of the right needle over to the left side loop. This completes one bind-off stitch. Next, bind off the second stitch. Work one knit stitch. Place the yarn tail below. Be mindful that the yarn tail should go behind the right needle and around to below the fabric piece. Slip the loop on the right needle. Place the right needle above the yarn tail. Then insert it into the slipped loop. Let me emphasize again, do not twist the loop's texture. This way, the yarn tail will be below the fabric piece. Work one knit stitch. After completing it, slip the loop on the right side of the right needle over to the loop on the left side. This completes binding off the second stitch. Continue to bind off the third stitch. First, work one purl stitch. Slip the loop on the right needle. Place the right needle below the yarn tail. Then insert it into the slipped loop. Work a purl stitch. After completing it, slip the loop on the right side over to the loop on the left side. This completes binding off the third stitch. This method of binding off is called single rib bind off. Continue binding off in this way. Work a knit stitch in the purl stitch position. The yarn tail is now above the fabric piece. Slip the loop on the right needle. Place the right needle above the yarn tail. Insert the hook into the loop. Work a knit stitch. Bind off one stitch. Work a purl stitch in the knit stitch position. The yarn tail is now behind the fabric piece. You need to bring the yarn tail to the top. Slip the loop on the right needle. Place the right needle below the yarn tail. Insert again into the slipped loop. Work a purl stitch. Bind off one stitch after completing. Follow this method to bind off the remaining stitches down. When only one loop is left, cut the yarn, leaving a 10 cm tail. Enlarge the loop. Pass the yarn tail through the loop. Pull tight. Thread the yarn tail into a darning needle. Weave in the ends on the wrong side of the piece. You can bind off a few more stitches. Trim any excess yarn tails. Continue binding off the remaining tails in the same way. The method for knitting the hem of the back piece is now complete. Next, we will knit the hem of the front piece. Place the front piece with the right side towards you, with the neckline facing down. Use the circular needle to start knitting from the magic ring. Refer to the chart. Pick up the first stitch from the edge below the hem of the back piece. Take out the corresponding yarn tail. Make a slip knot. Locate the first row of the hem on the right side of the back piece. Find the chain space below the last stitch. Insert the right needle into this chain space. Pull the slip knot through. Adjust the loop size. The joining is now complete. This is the first stitch. Next, pick up the first loop on the left needle. Knit 1 stitch. Then work 1 purl stitch and 1 knit stitch alternately. Continue to the end of the row. After completing this, on the first row of the hem on the left side of the back piece, pick up 1 stitch from the chain space below the first stitch. This completes the first row of the front hem. On any chain below the circular needle, place a marker to mark it. Next, we will cover the method for knitting the remaining part of the front hem. It is the same as the back hem, except for the difference in the number of rows. After completing it, use the single rib binding off method to tighten the ring. Take a look. This is what the front hem looks like when finished. Up to this point, we have completed the explanation of the hem knitting method. Next, we will knit the sleeves. Let's take a look at the finished product. Pick up stitches along the sleeve cap and knit in rounds. The knitting methods for both sleeves are the same. The sleeve is divided into 2 parts. The first part is the sleeve body, which is entirely in the brioche stitch pattern. At the same time, decrease stitches in the underarm area and on the last round. The second part is the cuff, which is knitted using the single rib stitch. The new stitch technique used is the right leaning decrease pattern and left leaning decrease pattern. Please watch as I demonstrate the specific knitting method. Here, I will continue using this sample for the demonstration. Let's start with the left sleeve. Place the reserved loops back onto the short straight needle. The sample has fewer stitches, but in practice, more stitches are reserved. Distribute them across approximately 3 needles. My sample is already threaded. Next, start picking up stitches from the increase placement of M1BL. Make a loose knot with the yarn tail. Hang the yarn tail with your right hand. You can see that the M1BL forms columns of braids. We pick up the strand above each column of braids. Take the 4th straight needle. Insert it downwards into the loop marked by the stitch marker. That is, the strand above this column of braids. Pick up the knotted loop. Adjust the loop size a bit. This is the first stitch of the sleeve body. Then, with the straight needle from top to bottom, insert on the left side into the loop above a column of braids. Yarn over and pick up. This is the second stitch. Continue downwards following this method to pick up the remaining loops on the left side. Refer to the chart for the specific stitch count. After completing, the increase point for M1BL on the right side and the loops on the straight needle will be quite a distance apart. From here, pick up one stitch, insert into the approximate position. Then, at the position of the previously left loop, knit the brioche stitch pattern. Continue knitting them downwards. After completing the loops at the position of the left stitches, pick up one stitch between the increase point for M1BL on the left side and the loops on the straight needle. Then continue to pick up stitches at the M1BL, picking up the corresponding number of stitches. Up to this point, the picking up of stitches for the sleeve body is completed. Place a stitch marker underneath the third straight needle. Finish the loops on the straight needle above the stitch marker. This indicates the end of a complete round. The first round is now completed. For the second round, at the pickup stitch positions, follow the chart to knit the single rib pattern. Work the brioche stitch pattern at the reserved loop positions. Pay attention that for larger sizes, you need to decrease stitches at the corresponding positions. The following rounds continue with the brioche stitch pattern. After completing the corresponding number of rounds, the next step is the decrease round. I'll demonstrate the decrease method using this small sample. First, knit one purl stitch. Then, work one left-leaning decrease pattern. Start by slipping the two loops from the first stitch on the left needle to the right needle. Next, insert the right needle from the front into the two loops of the second stitch on the left needle. Use your right thumb and index finger to hold the base of the loops. Remove the left needle. Make sure to hold tightly to prevent the loops from falling off. Insert the left needle from the back into the right side loops. Then slip the two sets of loops on the right needle back onto the left needle one by one. This way, the second stitch on the left needle has swapped positions with the third stitch, and the left side loops are now on top. Next, insert the right needle from left to right through both sets of loops at the front and work one Pt2 tog and knit stitch. Then bring the loops over to the top of the right needle. And at the same time pick up from the left side. 2 purl stitch loops and work 1 Kt2 tog and purl stitch. This completes the left-leaning decrease pattern. Next, continue working the brioche stitch pattern until there are 4 stitches remaining. Now we have reached this position. Work 1 right leaning decrease pattern. First, slip the first purl stitch from the left needle without knitting it. Then insert the right needle from behind. The second purl stitch loop on the left needle. Is held by the thumb and index finger of your right hand at its base. Remove the left needle. Insert it from the front through the 2 loops of lifted stitches on the right side. Then slip these 2 loops from the right needle back onto the left needle one by one. This exchanges the position of the chain and the purl stitch, with the loop of lifted stitch now on top on the right side. Next, work 1 Pt2 tog in the purl stitch. And 1 spo in the knit stitch. This right-leaning decrease pattern is now complete. Move the stitch marker. Place it below the third needle on any chain stitch. To make it convenient to count the rounds where no stitches are added or decreased later, continue working a few more rounds, maintaining the even brioche stitch pattern without adding or decreasing stitches. Please finish these rounds on your own. Now, I will explain how to count the rounds here. After completing the lifted stitches in an odd-numbered row, start counting from the chain stitch above the last place stitch marker. Begin with the chain stitch at the top. Remember, 1 chain stitch represents 2 rounds. 1, 2. The loops on the needle count as 1 round. This indicates that 5 rounds have been worked evenly without adding or decreasing stitches. When you're knitting, follow this method. To confirm the number of rounds, refer to the chart for specific round numbers. In my sample, there are fewer rounds. Now, let's perform the second decrease. Start with 1 purl stitch. Then work 1 left-leaning decrease pattern. First, slip the 2 loops of the first lifted stitch on the left needle. Then slip the purl stitch loop. Swap the position of this group of lifted stitch loops. Note that the lifted stitch loops should be on top. Place the previously slipped loops back onto the left needle. Then work 1 K2 tog in the knit stitch. Then work 1 K2 tog in the purl stitch. This left-leaning decrease pattern is now completed. Next, work the brioche stitch without increasing or decreasing until you reach the last 4 stitches. Now you are at the corresponding position. Work 1 right-leaning decrease pattern. First, slip the first loop on the left needle without working it. Then swap the position of these 2 lifted stitch loops with the purl stitch loop. Note that the lifted stitch loops should be on top. Then transfer the first loop on the right needle back to the left needle. Next, work 1 K2 tog in the purl stitch. Then work 1 spo in the knit stitch. This right-leaning decrease pattern is now completed. The second decrease is now complete. Move the stitch marker to the chain below on the needle. The following knit method is relatively simple. When knitting, decrease at the underarm of the fabric piece. The decrease positions are all between the 2nd and 5th stitches from the starting position, as well as the last 4 stitches. After completing each decrease, you can move the stitch marker to the loop below on the needle. Between decreases. When counting the number of rounds between decreases, don't forget to include the loops on the needle. Each chain represents 2 rounds. Refer to the chart for specific decrease counts and interval round numbers. As you progress, the 1st and 3rd needles will have fewer loops. You can move the loops from the 2nd needle to these 2 needles to roughly evenly distribute the stitch count. Refer to the chart for the specific round numbers for the sleeve body. You can also adjust the number of rounds worked even, based on the actual situation. For the final round of the sleeve body, follow the pattern to decrease stitches. Decrease at intervals corresponding to the stitch count. Continue with the left upper decrease pattern. Next, continue to work the single rib pattern for the sleeve cuff. Finally, bind off the loops using the single rib bind off method. The method is the same as for the hem. After completing, fasten off the yarn normally. Thread the yarn tail onto a sewing needle. Insert it from approximately the left side position. Pull tight the yarn tail. Sew through a few more times to secure. Then follow the texture on the wrong side of the fabric piece and weave in the yarn tail. This completes the sleeve. Everyone, take a look. This is what the left sleeve looks like after completing the small sample. Continue to knit the right sleeve using the same method. Up to this point, the method for knitting the sleeves has been fully explained. After the sweater is completed, the collar will be in a high neck style. If you want to make it into a small, firm round neck style, you can fold the collar inward and sew it to the fabric piece. I'll demonstrate the sewing method using this small sample. Cut 2 strands of yarn about 80 centimeters long. Use the remaining yarn tails from the garment knitting. Thread them together through a sewing needle. For my demonstration with the small sample, I'll continue using a single strand of cotton yarn. Turn the wrong side of the garment toward you. Fold the collar downward. Align it properly. Then, use the sewing needle to pick up each stitch column. The first round on the wrong side has these loops. Whip stitch these loops to the loops of the last round. Leave about 10 centimeters of yarn tail at the starting position. Sew around this round. After completing it, tie a double knot with the beginning and ending yarn tails. Hide all the yarn tails securely. Turn the garment to the right side. This small round neck is now finished. Up to this point, the knitting method for this sweater has been fully explained. If you have any questions during the process, don't hesitate to reach us via our website, Susan's Family, supporting your handwork experience, sharing the joy of life. Thank you all for watching. See you in the next episode.